Hello and welcome to Top 10. My name is EJ Moreno and this is a series where I compile my personal pop culture picks. This week's episode is all about the slasher genre. I will be ranking my top 10 slasher movies. The criteria for this list is simple. It's only one entry per franchise. That includes remakes and sequels, but other than that, there's no limitations. So I'm going to talk about movies from different countries, different decades, different directors, even different styles of filmmaking. So there is no real limitations other than one entry per franchise, because honestly, it's not fair. You can rank half of the Friday the 13th or half of the Halloween movies, and you take up most of the list right there. I want to make this list to showcase one of the best subgenres in all of horror movies. Slashers are so important to the genre and still prevalent today, but I will say this list is my personal picks. So if you don't agree with them exactly, let me know your picks down below in the comments, because I'm really interested to see how you feel about one of the best genres of all time, and that's slasher movies. Jumping right into the list, I'm going to talk about the movies that almost made the cut, and here are my 5 honorable mentions. First up is Henry, Portrait of the Serial Killer. It's Michael Rooker's first movie. It is a really graphic take of the slasher genre, and not like anything else on this list, but it's something I have to mention, and if you're a fan of serial killers or intense movies, you have to check out this movie. Next up is Alice, Sweet Alice, a movie I like. I don't want to say it's one of the best slasher movies of all time, but it is notable and it is very iconic, so it has to get at least a shout out. Next up is Black Christmas, one of my favorite horror films of all time, and honestly one of the first and most iconic slasher movies to ever come out. Next up you have The Burning. I think The Burning really stands out because of Tom Savini's amazing work, and it has a really memorable killer, and he looks insane. Check out The Burning. And my last honorable mention is The Prowler. The Prowler is so good. If there wasn't so many slasher movies in the 80s, I really think The Prowler would stand out as one of the best of that decade.
Now it's time for a breakdown.
An iconic slasher movie that predates Halloween? Yes, it's true. Number 10 on my list is Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a pure pioneer of the genre. Starring Marilyn Burns as the final girl Sally and Gunnar Hansen as Leatherface, you really have to appreciate what this film did for horror. Released in 1974, the same year as Black Christmas, this year has to be the true official start of the slasher genre. There is movies in the 60s that get dubbed as the first slasher movies, but with Black Christmas and, like I said, number 10, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you get the template, the formula, and the style of what slasher films were in the 80s and what they are still to this day. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is not for everybody. It is a very brutal take of this. Like one of my honorable mentions, Henry, Portrait of the Serial Killer, I will say Texas Chainsaw Massacre is just as gritty. It's not even that bloody. If you look back on it, it really doesn't stand out as being a gore fest, especially like what the remake turned out to be. But what Texas Chainsaw Massacre does is set you in this disturbing Texas town with really weird family members. I mean, the dinner scene with Grandpa is one of the chilling moments I've ever seen in a horror film. So like I said, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is iconic, and if you don't like it, at least respect it for what it did for the genre. Next up is a film that really changed modern horror films for the better and maybe for the worse, depending on who you ask. So number 9 is the film Saw.
Live or die.
While the later films dipped into just pure torture porn, the first Saw plays like a traditional slasher movie. There is a whodunit motif to this film, and I really think that's what kind of backs up the slasher genre and makes it more than just hack and slash. You're trying to figure out a mystery. You're trying to figure out all the elements of how all these people connect or what's going to happen by the end, and I think Saw is a great example of that. Also, slasher films are kind of infamous for really iconic endings. You have Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, even Sleepaway Camp, and Saw is up there with one of the best endings of all of horror movies. When Jigsaw gets up, you're just like, what is going on? Everything I know is a lie, and I have to always thank Saw for doing that. While, like I said, the other films kind of devolve into just pure gimmicks, and a lot of the traps just don't feel as fun. The traps in the first movie and the kills in the first movie are really iconic, just really memorable moments for a genre we all love. Another 21st century slasher movie is up next, and coming in at number 8 is Hatchet. Recent slasher attempts have been fine, but none are able to create an iconic villain that is except for Hatchet. Victor Crowley is on his way to legendary status as a horror slasher villain. He's going to be up there with Jason Voorhees, Freddy Krueger, Pinhead, Michael Myers. Victor Crowley may not be kind of a household name, but he is an iconic name for our genre, and someone I can't wait to see in his upcoming film, Victor Crowley. Adam Green took what we love about slasher movies. It's that like summertime feeling, it's that teens being dumb, it's that I can't wait to see what kills are next, and it's all in one movie, and you have to appreciate and kind of love what Hatchet does. It's really gross. I mean, the gore in this film is unlike anything else. There is a jaw-ripping scene that sticks in my mind, and I will never forget it. If you are on Tumblr or seen any like GIFs or moments from iconic horror movie kills, you have to know the one from Hatchet. It's so memorable, and it's Victor Crowley. Everything this man does is great. And do you know who plays him? Slasher legend Kane Hodder. Kane Hodder is so great. He's been playing some of our favorite Jasons, he's played other infamous big bads in movies, and he is Victor Crowley. I think Victor is one of his most iconic and one of his most now memorable roles, because you can kind of still see him in there. Yes, he has all these prosthetic works, but unlike Jason, he's not behind a mask. This is a brutal thing. We get to see his face, and I think that's what stands out the most. I really enjoy Hatchet, and I think it still is why we have films like the upcoming Happy Death Day. Slasher films are not gone, and I really think Hatchet is that one to try to keep the bridge alive between what we loved in the 80s and what's now modern slasher movies. Jumping back to the 80s, number 8 on my list is Sleepaway Camp 2.
Sleepaway Camp 2. Sign up and become a dismember.
The first Sleepaway Camp is a standout moment in horror genres and slasher films. It's a notable ripoff of Friday the 13th and provided a shock ending. That's all fine and dandy, but Sleepaway Camp 2 takes the shock and awe and creates an actual solid piece. And once you get to see Angela grow up from what you see her in the first Sleepaway Camp to who she is in the sequel, there just is no doubt that she's one of my favorite slashers of all time. I didn't want to just put the first entry of every franchise, and you'll see that a little bit later, because honestly, the first isn't always the best. Keep that in mind for other picks later on. So yeah, I have to pick out Sleepaway Camp 2 as my favorite of the Sleepaway Camp franchises. 3's okay, 3 gets a little too insane for me, a little too like, okay, we're losing what made 1 and 2 great. 1 is fine, but it is really the ending. 2 is taking moments that we love from other horror movies, we're homaging it, we're introducing a really fun new slasher with Angela, and it has some of the best kills and some of the best quotes. I really recommend Sleepaway Camp 2 for anyone who's craving a good slasher movie that you probably haven't seen. Coming in at number 6 is an Italian masterpiece, Deep Red.
Deep Red.
Deep Red is a giallo film. It's a slasher film with an Italian background, and it has a little bit more mystery to it. Slasher films are inherently North American, but other countries have left their mark on the subgenre, especially when they come from horror mastermind Dario Argento. Deep Red really stands out for me because it's more of a mystery and more of a drama than it is just a traditional horror film, but that's not taken away from the gore in this film, that's not taken away from the amazing kills and the amazing twists and turns the story takes. Deep Red it's just truly a great film. It's kind of how I feel about a movie like Psycho or The Shining or Jaws. It just transcends the horror genre and becomes a true piece of art in our medium of film and cinema. Dario Argento is an auteur. He for sure has a vision, and you know a Dario Argento movie when they start. I guess he's kind of lost his touch in recent years, especially with Dracula with Rutger Hauer. Don't watch it, not a great movie. But if you look at his work in the 70s like Suspiria and Deep Red, he's truly a master at what he does, and I love the mystery elements to this. The mystery elements are really what keeps all these movies kind of together. They range in craziness and gore and violence and characters, but what keeps it there is a sense of, I have no idea what's going on, but I'm down for the ride, and Deep Red is a pure example of that. And now things get really interesting as we hit the top 5. And number 5 on my list is Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter.
Friday the 13th.
final chapter.
If this list wasn't polarizing enough, I skipped placing the first Friday the 13th in place of the fourth outing. The final chapter is the artistic peak of the franchise and truly should have been the last entry. When you look at Friday the 13th, the final chapter, it has everything you want. It has amazing kills, some of the best work Tom Savini has ever done in the gore and violence department. It also has Corey Feldman and Crispin Glover. You get two iconic actors. Yes, Friday the 13th has Kevin Bacon. We all know Kevin Bacon's infamous kill, but does it have the Crispin Glover dance? But does it have baby Corey Feldman the same year, actually just months apart from Gremlins? Come on, you can't get anything better than this. And I will say, Jason is one of the best in this movie. He's already had the hockey mask. He already kind of knows what he wants to do as a killer, and he knows his mission, but he isn't a zombie yet like later in the franchise, and he isn't this bag-wearing loser like he is in 2. I just really think 4 is the peak of this franchise. I do think Jason Lives, the 6th entry, is a great film. I like it. I like 1 as well. Hell, I even like Freddy vs. Jason, but the final chapter is unlike any of the other movies I listed. It's streamlined, it's smart, it's sleek, it's intelligent, it's just fun to watch. And I really wish that, I don't ever wish entries, like I said, I like a lot of the Friday the 13th, but this should have been the end of the franchise, at least until Freddy vs. Jason. Oh boy, we're at number 4 on my list, and it is Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, Dream Warriors.
A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3.
Like the 5th spot on my list, I opted for a sequel instead of the first entry. Taking nothing away from the first Nightmare on Elm Street, the series really came into its own in the 3rd film. While I love Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 and how gay it gets, and I love the first one with how amazing it is, another film that has great actors, great kills, a great first-time performance as Freddy from Robert Englund. It's an amazing film. It's great. But 3 has so many great kills. 3 has so many iconic moments. And I will say, I think Freddy really came into his own in that movie. And honestly, you don't get anything better than Robert Englund in this movie. He really does something different than what he did in the first 2 entries and what he does later on. This Freddy's great, and watching him interact with Heather Langenkamp's Nancy is just something you can never get tired of. She was great in 1 as Nancy, their battle was cool, there was a nice little break in 2, but 3, she's coming back more mature, the franchise feels more mature, and I really have to say Dream Warriors is my favorite in all of the Nightmare on Elm Streets. Next up is a legendary film that doesn't really need an introduction, so here it is at number 3, Psycho. Psycho is truly one of the top 10 films of all time, let alone in the slasher genre. This ranks so highly because of the quality of filmmaking, but also because what it does for slashers in general. No matter what any other artist on this list would say, Alfred Hitchcock has influenced them. His films are just ingrained in pop culture and ingrained in any filmmaker or cinephile's just heart. It's just his work is what we love about horror and what we love about cinema. So, why does Psycho rank so highly? Because it's not a traditional slasher? Who says it's not? You get POV shots from the killer, something that Halloween, something that Friday the 13th has done. So, once again, trendsetter. You also have a killer with a whodunit kind of scenario. Yes, we all kind of think it's Norman Bates, but you really don't know it's Norman, or you still think it's Mother. There's a confusing kind of mystery aspect to this movie, and that, once again, that whodunit feeling is what makes slasher slasher. Without any further ado, number 2 on my list, Halloween. I know, you swore this was going to be the number 1 pick. Halloween is amazing, iconic, and memorable, but for me, it's the blueprint that was later perfected. John Carpenter's pioneering slasher movie is so famous, and it's everyone's favorite slasher movie. It's not my favorite slasher movie. Honestly, I like the remake of Halloween more than I like John Carpenter's. Nothing taking away nothing for John Carpenter's. I know it's a better film, and I know it's just iconic in all of film history. So no, I'm not saying that I think Rob Zombie's is better, but for my personal taste, I would put that higher. But on a list of top 10 slasher movies, you have to put Halloween on there. You have to put the original. John Carpenter's masterpiece starring Jamie Lee Curtis is unlike anything else we've seen up to that point. Like I said, you had Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you had Psycho, but none of them were Halloween. Halloween is it's just perfect. It is a fun viewing that has a lot of stuff that is later perfected in other movies. Though Marilyn Burns does great as Sally in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, no Scream Queen will ever come up to the legacy of Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode. Jamie Lee Curtis's performance in this film is just so raw and so organic. Of course she comes from a legacy of a father like Tony Curtis and a mother like Janet Leigh, who is in Psycho, who is the first major kill in Psycho. Jamie Lee Curtis has horror pedigree in her blood. But what she does is something her mother could never do, and that's stand the test of time within the genre. And now it's time for my number one pick, and it's Wes Craven's Scream. If I didn't lose you after placing Halloween number 2 on this list, then welcome to my number 1 pick. It's the 90s slasher masterpiece Scream. Scream has it all. It has shock and awe, it has a whodunit mystery, it has an amazing cast of lovable characters, it also has some amazing kills, and look, it creates a legendary villain in Ghostface. I briefly mentioned this in the Halloween section, but Halloween made a blueprint that we all loved and followed. That was until Scream, when Wes Craven was like, look, I've even made my own slasher with Nightmare on Elm Street. What can I do? What can I do to evolve this genre? Not just slasher films, but horror in general. And that's what Scream does, and that's why Scream is so important to me. Yes, I am a millennial, and yes, this film is so made for my age group and my demographic, but that's not taking away anything from Halloween. Just Scream is just so perfect for me. Scream is what slasher movies should be. It has mystery, it has fun, it has thrills, it has shock, it has gore, it has a little bit of humor in it. That's something that I don't think a lot of the other movies on this list has, or if they do get humorous, they get too funny and kind of lose away the fun and the thrills. No, Scream is just A+ filmmaking and really one of the best slasher films and one of the best horror films of all time. So that's it for my top 10 slasher movies. What did you think of my list? Please let me know down in the comments below. Also give me your top 10 slasher movies of all time. If you did enjoy this video, make sure you give me a thumbs up. Also, please subscribe to my channel. If you are subscribed, make sure you turn on notifications so you know when new videos are posted. Before I go, make sure you also leave in the comments what kind of top 10 list do you want to see. I love suggestions, so if you have an idea and you want to see it, let me know and I'll give you a top 10 of whatever you want to see.